So as we've seen at the forum this morning, I mean, there are a lot of different challenges that are facing the energy industry. I mean, things from massive investments and transmission and distribution to the role of nuclear, renewables, wind, solar, all of that. And what are some of the major challenges that you're seeing in the industry? And how is that similar or different from what Pepco is facing?
Okay. Well, I think you're correct. There are some major challenges, but I would also just say there's some major opportunities, and I'll come back to that. But I think the biggest challenge is just the lack of an energy policy for the country to begin to address some of the fundamental policy issues that are stated elsewhere in terms of climate change. The fact that we have a whole fleet of generation assets that are coming close to the end of their life, and yet without having some specific policy in place as to what direction the country wants to go in. Major generation players, unlike ourselves, we don't have a huge generation footprint, and the majority of our assets are newer vintage. But I can just imagine standing in my peers' shoes in other companies, and the concern of taking that first couple steps along the road without having the rules of the road written. So I would say that that's probably the biggest challenge we have. I would also say that it's, you know, or one of the earlier speakers commented about that, you know, as people react to the direction of energy policy, there is just this undeniable fact that someone has to pay for this. So this is going to be at an incremental cost, and we need to do everything we can, which is part of why Pepco went down the path it did, to move ahead with the smart grid, to give customers more tools to really manage their energy usage, and then really try to minimize the cost impacts going forward. But that's a very, very difficult issue in terms of just people recognizing that all of this is going to come at a price. For us, I think the focus we've had on the smart grid and putting the tools in place is really the right place for us to be, because at the end of the day, it's going to be most helpful to our customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, what role do you see Washington playing in moving the national energy industry forward?
Well, obviously the issue around just what to do with carbon, whether it's through cap and trade or some other financial mechanism that actually causes the industry to start to invest and to actually take some of these assets offline, is critical. I think what the president has done most recently, which is to be more vocal about supporting nuclear energy. My own personal view is that nuclear has to be a very strong part of our solution going forward. And I struggle at times looking at other countries across the world who seem to be able to deal with this. You know, as Ed Torella mentioned earlier today, that, you know, there is this one little problem of, you know, what do you do with the spent nuclear fuel, which is not an insignificant issue, but, you know, it's hard for me to believe that from a technological point of view that we can't get past this. So I think that you know, having the rules of the road around carbon are essential. Having a very strong supportive policies around nuclear is really important. And then also having the federal government help us build another set of highways, which are really the transmission system, are really the three things that I think you know, are really kind of at the top of my list of priorities.
Definitely. Now, you talked a lot about the policy side of it. I mean, how do you see the federal government's role in terms of providing stimulus funding or providing additional dollars? I mean, what sort of difference do you see that making?
Well, I think that one of the fortunate things that happened through the unfortunate situation economically was that the government, I think, properly understood that they could kickstart some things by focusing on infrastructure. And obviously there's a huge amount of infrastructure build-out need that's required within the energy industry. So sending the right signals to companies, to regulators, to the investing community through the almost the $4 billion of smart grid stimulus dollars was obviously very, very helpful. And for us, actually really caused us to accelerate a series of projects that we otherwise would not have moved up in our planning process. So I think that's very, very important. I think Not that it's applicable to us, but I think the notion of having loan guarantees for nuclear build is very helpful. I mean, Ed made the comment in his presentation earlier that it's not that the government's giving us or giving that company the money. They're just providing a very clear signal that somewhere along the line, if something bad happened, that the government would really provide the backstop. So those types of things that the government is doing either on the stimulus or on the loan guarantee front are very important signals to send not only to the company, but also send to the investing community.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
Okay.
with us today.
Sure, my pleasure.